She called me inside just to move a chair, but I still remember how close we stood in that quiet room. It started on one of those in-between afternoons, not warm enough for summer, not cold enough for winter. The kind of day that feels like it's waiting for someone to decide what it wants to be. I was sitting at the small cafe near the bus stop, pretending to read a book I'd already finished. The pages were just something to look at while my mind drifted. That's when I saw her through the glass, carrying a brown paper bag, hair pulled up loosely like she'd done it on the way out the door. She noticed me. A small nod. The kind people give when they're used to being polite, not when they expect anything back. We'd met a few times. I rented the upstairs unit of her duplex. She's my landlord, technically, but she never felt like just that. She came in, ordered black coffee. No sugar, no milk. She always does. When the barista handed her the cup, she smiled. A short, quiet smile that barely reached her eyes. I noticed how she folded the napkin after wiping the lid. Neat creases, corners aligned like she needed something to control. "Morning," she said as she passed my table. "Hey," I answered a little too quickly. She hesitated like she might sit down, then didn't. "You're heading home after this?" "I think so." "What?" Her eyes flicked to the window, like she wasn't sure if asking was a mistake. "The living room chair. I've been meaning to move it. It's heavy, and I just—" She stopped mid-sentence. Then softer. "Would you mind helping? The house always smells faintly of rain and clean laundry." When she opened the door, she slipped off her shoes by habit, even though the floor was spotless. "The chair's just over there," she said. Her voice had that careful calm people use when they don't want to sound like they're asking for company. I lifted one side. She took the other. Our hands brushed once. Light, accidental, but it stayed in my chest longer than it should've. We set it down near the window. She exhaled, pushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you," she said, but didn't move back right away. The room went quiet except for the sound of the clock. Her phone buzzed once on the counter. She didn't check it. I should have said something, anything, but all I could think about was how still she looked. Like she was trying not to breathe too loud. She glanced at me then. Just a second too long. I looked away first. "Do you want coffee?" she asked suddenly. "I just made some." I nodded. My voice wouldn't have come out right anyway. She poured it into mismatched mugs. One had a small crack near the rim. She handed that one to me. Maybe she didn't notice, or maybe she did. I stood near the table while she leaned against the counter. The air between us felt charged, like something was waiting to happen, but neither of us believed it would. When I finished the coffee, I placed the mug down slowly, careful not to make a sound. "I should go," I said. She nodded, eyes on the floor. Then, barely above a whisper, "Thank you for helping." Outside, I heard the door click shut behind me. I walked halfway up the stairs before my phone buzzed. A message, just her name on the screen. "You forgot your book." I hadn't brought one. And for a moment, I just stood there, thumb hovering over the reply, wondering if she knew that. I told myself it didn't mean anything, her message, that strange mistake about the book. But a few days later, I found myself standing by her door again, holding a paperback I hadn't touched in months. It was an excuse, thin as paper, but it worked. She opened the door halfway, wearing a loose sweater and that same quiet composure that made her look like she was still mid-thought. "Oh," she said, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "You didn't have to bring it." I figured maybe this was the book I forgot, I said, smiling a little, though my heart was racing like I'd just done something reckless. She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in for a bit, then." I made tea. The kettle whistled softly as I leaned against the counter. She moved around the kitchen like someone used to doing things alone, smooth, efficient, but a little too quiet. "My son used to leave his books everywhere," she said suddenly. The sentence hung there for a moment before she continued. "He's away at university now. The house feels different." I nodded, not sure what to say. She placed a mug in front of me and sat across the table, eyes on the steam. "I guess you get used to people leaving," she said, almost to herself. Then she smiled. A small, apologetic one. "Sorry, that's not really tea conversation." "No, it's okay," I said. "I get it." "Do you?" she asked softly. I wasn't sure if it was a real question. We sat in silence for a while. I noticed the chipped edge of the mug again, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the way she kept touching her ring finger. Bare now, but still a habit. "You're too young to understand," she said after a moment, but there wasn't any distance in her tone, just a kind of sadness, like she wanted to believe that. I smiled faintly. Maybe. But I noticed things. Her eyes lifted then, meeting mine for the first time that afternoon. What kind of things? The way you fold napkins. The way you avoid checking your phone when it buzzes. I shrugged. Just small things. Her breath caught. Not loudly, but enough that I noticed. That's a dangerous kind of attention, she said quietly. I looked down, embarrassed. Sorry, I didn't mean. She interrupted with a soft laugh. No, it's not bad. Just unexpected. The clock ticked behind us, slow and deliberate. When I finished my tea, she stood and reached for my cup, fingers brushing mine. The same unplanned, charged contact as before. Neither of us moved away immediately. She took a small step back, clearing her throat. You should go before it starts raining, she said, glancing toward the window though the sky was still clear. At the door, I turned once more. She was standing by the table, one hand resting on the back of the chair we'd moved last week. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. I thought later as I walked upstairs, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It was a Thursday evening when she knocked. Soft, 2 taps, then a pause, like she wasn't sure if she should follow through. I opened the door. She stood there with a small box in her hands. Could you help me change a light bulb? She asked, half smiling, half embarrassed. I nodded. No word seemed right. The living room was dim, that kind of late-day light where everything looks gentler. She steadied the chair while I reached up, fingers brushing the ceiling. When the bulb flickered on, the glow softened around her face. Warm, almost forgiving. She looked up at me. You're getting good at rescuing me from small disasters. I think you just make them sound like disasters, I said. That made her laugh, quiet, but real this time. We ended up sitting for tea again, this time without the pretense of reason. The silence between us had started to feel like a language. She looked tired, though not in the way that needed sleep. More like she'd been holding something in for too long. I used to hate quiet houses, she said suddenly. Now I'm not sure what I'd do if they weren't. I wanted to say I knew what she meant, that I understood the way loneliness can start to feel like safety, but before I could, there was a knock on the door. A man's voice. Mom? You home? Her son. Her eyes widened just a little, not panic, just the sharp return of reality. She stood quickly. Just a minute, she called, smoothing her sweater like that could erase the scene. I moved toward the kitchen, instinctively. She met my eyes, a silent thank you, maybe a plea. Her son came in with a burst of normal energy that made the air between us feel too still. Didn't know you had company, he said, glancing at me. Just helping with a light bulb, she said smoothly, but her hand trembled slightly as she placed a mug in the sink. I smiled, trying to make it easy. Yeah, I should get going. Thanks again, she said, voice quieter now. Later that night, I heard her on the porch. The soft creak of the step she always forgot to fix. I went down before I could talk myself out of it. She turned when she heard me. I didn't mean for that to be awkward, I said. It wasn't, she said quickly, too quickly. Then softer. It's just complicated. The air was cool, heavy with unspoken things. I know, I said. We stood there, inches apart, her hand resting on the railing, mine almost near hers. She looked up at me then, eyes catching the porch light. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world had narrowed to that one breath, that one possibility. Her lips parted slightly, but the words didn't come. Then she stepped back. I should turn in, she said, almost a whisper. I nodded, though it felt like something inside me had leaned forward and never quite returned. It had rained the night before. The streets still glistened, damp, smelling faintly of earth and coffee. I was locking my bike when I saw her standing by the corner store, umbrella closed, holding a paper bag like she'd forgotten why she came. Hey, I said. She turned, startled. Then the familiar half-smile. You're up early. I couldn't sleep, I said, though it wasn't true. I'd slept fine until I'd dreamed of her hand reaching for mine and woken up guilty. She laughed softly. Me neither. We walked together, the kind of walk where words show up late. She talked about her work, how long the days had become. Then, quieter, about her son visiting next month. He's bringing a friend, she said. They'll stay in the upstairs unit, if that's okay. It took me a second to realize what she meant. I'd need to move out. Oh, I said, trying to sound casual. Yeah, sure. Of course. She looked over, studying my face. I didn't mean soon. Just for a bit. But the words had already done something. There was space between us now, small but real. We reached the park, sat on a damp bench. The sky hung low, like it didn't know if it wanted to rain again. I don't want to make things strange, she said finally. They already are, I said before I could stop myself. Her head turned, eyes soft but tired. You think so? I hesitated. I think. I notice you too much. She didn't look away, just sat there, hands clasped together in her lap, thumb tracing the edge of her ring finger again. You shouldn't, she said gently. I know. Silence. The kind that presses on your ribs. Then, barely audible, you remind me of him. I frowned. Who? My husband, she said. Before things got complicated. Before he stopped listening. She let out a small, broken laugh. It's strange, right? Missing the idea of someone more than the person. I wanted to tell her I wasn't him. That what I felt wasn't confusion or nostalgia. But the words felt heavy in my throat, wrong somehow. Instead, I said, maybe it's not strange. She turned to me again. The air between us shifted. I could feel it. That quiet gravity, the pull that had been building for weeks. Her hand moved slightly, almost toward mine, then stopped halfway. A pause. The kind that feels like a lifetime. Her breath caught. I shouldn't, she started, but didn't finish. I leaned forward just a little, enough for both of us to feel it. The rain began again, soft against her hair, the world holding its breath. We didn't move, didn't speak. The question hung there, trembling, alive. What are we doing? For 3 days, I didn't see her. No light in the kitchen window, no sound of her kettle in the morning. Just the muted silence of a house, trying not to remember something. I told myself it was fine. People get busy, lives resume. But every time I passed her door, the air felt different. Heavier. On the 4th day, her car was gone. A note slid under my door. Had to go out of town for a few days. You can let yourself into the downstairs if you need anything. No name, no take care. Just space. When she came back, everything had shifted, subtly, like furniture moved a few inches to the left. You wouldn't notice unless you'd memorized the room. She waved from her porch when she saw me, smiling politely. The kind people use when they've decided to forget something. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Hey, she echoed. You've been keeping busy? Yeah. Work mostly. Good, she said, and that was it. I waited for her to ask me in. She didn't. Later, I found out through the neighbor that her ex-husband had been in town. They'd met for lunch. Just catching up, he'd said when he dropped off a package at her place. I didn't ask her about it, and she didn't offer anything either. Still, things crept back into rhythm, quiet greetings, small errands, accidental eye contact. But something in her tone had changed. Softer, but also more careful. One evening, I saw her on the porch again, phone pressed to her ear. She wasn't speaking, just listening, face unreadable. When she noticed me across the fence, she turned away. That night, I typed a message I never sent. Did I do something wrong? I deleted it. Typed again. Are you okay? Deleted that too. Instead, I stared at the empty message box until the screen dimmed. A few days later, I went to the cafe where we'd first run into each other. Her favorite table by the window was empty. The napkin dispenser was missing one corner piece. She used to fix that every time she sat there. I waited anyway, ordered her usual coffee, and left it untouched. 15 minutes passed. 20. When I got up to leave, I saw her car pull into the lot. Too late, almost like timing itself was avoiding us. She stepped out, saw me through the window. We froze. For a second, it looked like she might come in. Her hand even touched the door handle. Then, she stopped. Our eyes met once, brief, distant, and she turned back toward her car. I sat back down, heart steady but hollow. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I found her in the kitchen one late afternoon, the kind of light that slips through half-closed blinds and lands in thin rectangles on the floor. She was rinsing a cup, fingers curling around it like she didn't want to let go. I didn't knock. I didn't announce myself. I just leaned against the doorframe and watched. Her head lifted, eyes meeting mine. No smile, just recognition. Hey, I said softly. Hey, she replied, voice even. The silence stretched, longer than it should have, thick with everything neither of us had said. I stepped forward. The floor creaked beneath me. She didn't move back. I've been avoiding this, I said, words clumsy. I don't want to make things harder than they already are, but... Her hand froze on the cup. The room smelled faintly of tea and rain from the window, left open earlier. You don't have to say it, she said, and it was more fragile than usual. I know, I said, but I have to. I notice you. I notice everything. How you fold napkins, how you hesitate before answering, how you drink your tea when you think no one's looking. She blinked, and I could see the tension in her shoulders, the slow intake of a breath, like she was measuring the weight of my words. Why now? She asked quietly. Why here? Because I can't. I can't stop noticing, I admitted. My hands were in my pockets, knuckles white. Her eyes softened, and she set the cup down on the counter. Fingers lingered on the rim. You're not supposed to notice. You shouldn't. I know, I whispered. But I do. And I'm sorry if it's too much. She shook her head, almost imperceptibly. It's not too much. It's just everything. It's complicated. I took a careful step closer. Complicated's fine. I just want you to know how it is. How I feel. Even if it changes. Nothing. She studied me, and it looked like she was searching for the right measure of courage. Then, barely, her hand brushed mine on the counter. Light. Quiet. Not a spark, not a fire. Just contact me. Enough to make the room smaller, the air warmer. I don't know what we can do, she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the edges of vulnerability. Then we do nothing, I said softly. For now, I let the words fade. Just being here. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a simple, human acknowledgement. I returned it, and for a long moment, the clock ticked, the kettle hissed faintly in the background, and the world was quiet enough to hold the weight of all we hadn't said. Finally, she whispered, Okay. I nodded. That was enough. For now, it was enough. The mornings had changed. 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. The clock on the wall chimed quietly as I sipped my black coffee, steam curling lazily into the sunlit kitchen. She was there too, folding a napkin, the same careful folds she'd always done, and humming a tune I didn't recognize. We didn't need words. She poured tea for both of us, mismatched mugs like always. I caught the faint crack along the rim of hers and smiled. She caught mine, eyes soft, just a little amused that I noticed. The chair we'd moved weeks ago sat by the window. I brushed a finger along the worn wood, remembering how close we'd stood that first time. You're quiet this morning, she said softly. I'm just thinking, I said. About nothing. About nothing can be good, she replied, settling into the chair opposite me. We sat like that for a while, the world outside moving, people rushing, but our kitchen held its own small gravity. Tea cooled in our mugs, steam faint now, almost gone. Afternoons were easier now. She still left little notes for me when I forgot my keys. I still brought the wrong book sometimes and laughed quietly at the memory of her correcting me. Evenings on the porch felt like a shared secret. The same old bench, damp from the occasional rain, became a quiet ritual. We didn't need to talk. Our hands sometimes touched when passing sugar packets, sometimes didn't. Either way, the silence carried meaning. The past weeks, the near-crossed lines, the hesitations, the pauses, had settled into something calmer. Not uncomplicated, not effortless. Just real. She made a small joke about her son visiting again. I laughed softly, shaking my head. You know, she said, tilting her head, life's a little better when you notice the small things. I've noticed, I said. Her gaze lingered on mine, steady, quiet. No declarations. No dramatic confessions. Just understanding. Later, I stood by the kitchen counter, mug in hand, watching her rearrange the books on the shelf. I caught the way her fingers brushed the spines, like she'd memorized each one, like she had memorized me too, without ever saying it. The sun dropped low, spilling gold across the room. I reached for the chair near the window, brushing it lightly as I sat. She poured herself a fresh cup of tea and joined me. Hands rested on the table, near enough to touch, not quite. And in that quiet, ordinary way that made everything feel extraordinary, I realized, this is enough. No grand declarations. No cinematic finales. Just mornings that start at 8:47 a.m., black coffee, tea, folded napkins, and someone who sees you without asking. I caught her glance, soft, knowing. She smiled slightly, the kind of smile that said everything without a single word. And I understood it. Only we understood it. The bench would wait for later. The rain would come again. The kettle would whistle. But for now, in the quiet glow of our kitchen, everything felt as it should. A small piece, earned. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet? Real love stories do you want to hear next?